Every empire harbors hidden cracks, waiting to fracture under pressure in the golden haze of the city's twilight. After Eleanor's birth, Sophia Elena Harrington, formerly Blackwood, believed she had finally grasped a fragile peace. The hospital room where their daughter entered the world had been a sanctuary filled with the soft beeps of monitors and the warm glow of new life. But life rarely wraps itself in eternal happiness, and the storms of the past have a way of brewing anew. Ethan Harrington, her husband, had vowed to change, to rebuild himself from the ashes of his arrogance. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, Sophia wondered if that promise was strong enough to withstand the gathering tempest. Welcome to this side story, where echoes of the past collide with future uncertainties, and old secrets resurface to test the bonds of love once more. Sophia stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of their modest apartment, overlooking the sprawling metropolis that bore the invisible marks of her family's influence. The sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows across the room, much like the doubts in her heart. Eleanor slept peacefully in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling in rhythmic innocence. At just 3 months old, she was the living embodiment of hope, a bridge between what was and what could be. Sophia traced her fingers along the windowsill, remembering the night everything shifted. It had been a whirlwind since the revelation. Once the self-proclaimed king of his construction empire, Ethan had fallen spectacularly. His company, Harrington Construction, dissolved like mist in the morning sun, stripped bare by the truth Sophia and her father, Reginald Blackwood, had unveiled. The angel investor who had propped him up for years was Reginald, acting on Sophia's pleas to give her beloved a chance. She had sacrificed her legacy, stepping away from the helm of Blackwood Industries, where she had orchestrated billion-dollar expansions across continents. Graduating as valedictorian from Stanford, fluent in multiple languages, she had traded boardrooms for the shadows of Ethan's ambition. But ambition had blinded him. At galas and gatherings, he dismissed her as a mere hobbyist, and her charity work was reduced to trivial pursuits, while he paraded Vanessa Klein as the brilliant strategist. With her Wharton MBA and continental connections, Vanessa was the facade of sophistication Ethan craved. Little did he know she was a pawn for the Kellerman Group, plotting to dismantle his empire from within. The memory of that fateful birthday party still stung. Ethan, center stage under crystal chandeliers, had toasted to his success, crediting Vanessa while glancing at Sophia with casual indifference. Her charity initiatives, which had housed veterans and funded medical missions saving lives across borders, were waved off as distractions. That night, as a towering ice sculpture of Blackwood Tower arrived as a gift from Reginald, the room buzzed with speculation. Sophia had slipped away, her resolve crystallizing. She texted her father, ready to come home. The fallout was swift and merciless. Vanessa revealed her true allegiance, and contracts evaporated overnight. Suppliers cut ties, banks froze accounts, and clients fled. Ethan, stripped of his illusions, faced the mirror of his making. He moved into a cramped apartment, took a laborer's job at a rival firm, and began volunteering at the Children's Hospital, reading stories to the ill as a quiet atonement. Visits to his mother's grave became a ritual, where he confessed his failures and discovered Sophia's secret acts of kindness, funding the upkeep, establishing scholarships in his mother's name. Then came the pregnancy revelation, buried in divorce papers. Sophia had carried their child through the chaos, her preeclampsia a physical manifestation of the stress he caused. Rushing to the hospital, Ethan confronted his deepest fears. In those tense hours, as doctors stabilized her and delivered Eleanor prematurely, he vowed transformation. No more ego-driven pursuits. He refused Reginald's offer of a vice presidency at Blackwood Industries, choosing instead to rebuild from the ground up, proving his worth through sweat and sincerity. Months later, Sophia watched Ethan enter the apartment, his construction boots muddy from the day's labor. He had traded tailored suits for workwear, his hands calloused from honest toil. "Hey," he said softly, careful not to wake Eleanor. "How was your day?" Sophia turned, her eyes searching his face for signs of the old Ethan. "Productive. I met with the board at Blackwood. We're expanding into sustainable housing projects." She paused, gauging his reaction. "Father wants me to lead it." Ethan nodded, a genuine smile breaking through. "That's incredible. You were always the visionary." He set down his toolbox and approached, hesitating before pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I'm proud of you, Sophia, truly." She allowed the hug, feeling the warmth but holding back complete trust. The scars of dismissal ran deep. She had dimmed her light for 5 years to let him shine, hiding her intellect and heritage. Born into wealth, she had chosen love over legacy, only to watch him elevate others while reducing her to a footnote. The pain of those public slights, the sting of hearing her life's work called hobbies, lingered like a shadow. Yet change was evident. Ethan attended therapy sessions, journaling his reflections on pride and partnership. He cooked dinners, changed diapers, and listened intently when she shared her day's triumphs. No more interruptions with his own stories. He asked questions and celebrated her achievements without envy. But the storm brewed subtly. Whispers in the business world reached Sophia's ears. Undeterred by her failed scheme, Vanessa had risen in the Kellerman ranks, spreading rumors of Ethan's fraud. Old associates avoided him, and a potential lawsuit loomed, accusing him of unfair competition under Blackwood's shadow. Reginald had offered to intervene, but Ethan insisted on handling it himself. "I need to face this," he told Sophia, "to prove I'm not the man who hid behind your strength." That evening, as they sat on the balcony, Eleanor cooing in Sophia's arms, the conversation turned serious. "Sophia," Ethan began, his voice steady, "I know trust isn't rebuilt overnight, but I've been thinking about us, about our family. I want to renew our vows, not in grandeur, but in truth, as equals." Sophia met his gaze, her heart torn between forgiveness and caution. "Equals? After everything?" "Yes. No more pedestals. You lead empires. I build foundations. Together, we create something unbreakable." The city lights twinkled below, a reminder of the world they navigated. Sophia considered the path ahead. The side story of their lives was far from over. Old rivals like Vanessa plotted in the wings, and internal demons whispered doubts. But in Eleanor's innocent eyes, she saw possibility. Love, tempered by trials, could endure. As the night deepened, Sophia whispered, "We'll see, one day at a time." The new vow hung in the air, a fragile thread in the tapestry of redemption. But in this city of hidden empires, cracks could mend or widen. The test was yet to come, where past betrayals met future promises, and love faced its ultimate reckoning. Sophia Elena Harrington stood in the dimly lit corner of the Riverside Country Club's grand ballroom, her simple black dress blending into the shadows as the crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across the marble floor. The air hummed with the clink of champagne flutes and the low murmur of the city's elite. Construction tycoons, real estate moguls, and politicians, all orbiting her husband, Ethan Harrington. At the center of the room, Ethan commanded attention in his custom-tailored suit, his voice booming with the confidence of a man who believed he had built an empire from nothing. "Harrington Heights will redefine this city," he declared, gesturing grandly. 20 luxury towers, each one a monument to ambition, reaching for the stars. Sophia sipped her champagne, her polite smile masking the ache in her chest. She knew every detail of those towers. Late nights poring over architectural blueprints while Ethan slept, her suggestions for structural efficiencies that saved millions, her quiet corrections to his environmental impact reports he never read. Yet tonight, as always, she was merely Ethan's wife, who kept busy with charity work. The crowd nodded approvingly as Ethan painted his vision, oblivious to the silent architect behind his success. In a striking red dress that screamed wealth, Vanessa Klein stepped closer to Ethan, her hand grazing his arm. "Your portfolio's potential is staggering, Ethan," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "We should discuss global expansion over dinner soon." Ethan announced that her Wharton MBA and connections across 3 continents make her invaluable, his smile lingering on Vanessa, the brains behind our international strategy. The words cut deeper than Sophia expected. She felt the familiar sting of being overlooked, her contributions reduced to nothing, while Vanessa basked in praise. Sophia's charity work, literacy programs teaching thousands, housing initiatives for veterans, medical missions saving lives, was dismissed as hobbies. She kept her composure, and years of practice held her steady. She said softly, her tone warm enough to pass as genuine, "It must be thrilling to work with such talent." Ethan turned to her, as if suddenly remembering her presence. "Oh, darling, meet everyone properly." He placed a hand on her back, a gesture more possessive than affectionate. "This is Sophia, my wife. She keeps herself busy with various activities, charity mostly," Sophia added with rehearsed humility. "Nothing as grand as international business." Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. She said, "How nice to have hobbies," the word sharp as a blade. The crowd shifted toward the silent auction, leaving Sophia alone by the bar. James, the bartender who had served at these events for decades, poured her a double scotch with a knowing look. "Another big night for Mr. Harrington," he said. "Something like that," Sophia replied, the warmth of the drink easing the knot in her chest. "Tell me, James," she said, "what's the most surprising thing you've learned about these people?" He polished a glass thoughtfully. "The most powerful person in the room is rarely the one everyone's watching." Sophia studied him, intrigued. "Take tonight," he continued. "All eyes are on the man giving speeches, but the real power is often in the corner, waiting for the right moment to step forward." Her phone buzzed, pulling her from the thought. A text from her father, Reginald Blackwood. "Meeting tomorrow, 3 p.m. Blackwood Industries, come alone." Her pulse quickened. Across the room, Ethan laughed with Vanessa, his arm casually around her shoulders as they examined auction items. The sight, once heartbreaking, now hardened her resolve. She finished her scotch and approached them. "Ethan, darling, a word?" He looked irritated. "Can it wait, sweetheart? We're discussing the Skyline project." "It can wait," she said smoothly. "Just wanted to mention an interesting business opportunity. Tomorrow afternoon, downtown." Ethan's eyes sharpened. "Who?" "The angel investor," she said, voice calm. "The one who made everything possible." The group fell silent, Ethan's face cycling through surprise, confusion, and curiosity. "They want to meet now? After all these years?" "Apparently," Sophia said. "They were specific. Come alone." Vanessa stepped forward. "Perhaps I should join for strategic support." "No," Sophia said firmly, her tone unyielding. "Alone." Ethan's mind raced. This could be huge. "Sophia, new funding, maybe a partnership, perhaps," she said, turning to leave. "Oh, and Ethan, wear your best suit. First impressions matter." As she walked away, the buzz of speculation followed. Ethan's voice rose, spinning theories about the investor's identity. Sophia smiled to herself, collecting her coat. Tomorrow, he would learn who had been pulling the strings. The memory of their early days flickered in her mind. 5 years ago, Ethan was different, humble, asking her opinion on every decision, grateful for her support. They'd sit in their tiny apartment, dreaming over blueprints. She sold her jewelry to fund his first equipment and worked odd jobs to keep them afloat. But success changed him. He stopped asking, started dismissing. She hid her past, Stanford valedictorian, architect of Blackwood's southeast expansion, to let him shine. Love had demanded sacrifice, but at what cost? Now, with Eleanor at home, the stakes were higher. Sophia wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She thought of her father's office, the Blackwood empire she'd walked away from. Tomorrow, she'd step back into that world, not as a shadow, but as the heir. "The most dangerous woman in any room," James had said, "is the one everyone underestimates." Sophia Elena Harrington had been underestimated long enough. As she stepped into the cool night air, the city skyline loomed, Blackwood Tower piercing the heavens. The silent queen would speak tomorrow, and Ethan's world would tremble. The cracks in his empire were about to widen, exposing truths he never saw coming. The morning sun streamed through the towering windows of Blackwood Industries' penthouse, bathing the executive floor in a golden glow that felt both regal and imposing. Sophia Elena Harrington stepped off the private elevator, the scent of fresh orchids and polished leather stirring memories she had buried deep. This was her world once, a realm of limitless power where she had orchestrated billion-dollar deals before her 25th birthday. Now, returning as the prodigal daughter, she carried the weight of 5 years spent in the shadows for love. Her simple blue dress, chosen to blend in, belied the fire within. Margaret Chen, her father's assistant, greeted her with a knowing smile. "He's been expecting you, Miss Blackwood." Sophia paused at the massive oak doors to Reginald Blackwood's office, the nameplate unchanged since childhood, when she'd spin in his leather chair dreaming of empires. "Does he still keep the Kenyan elephant sculpture?" she asked softly. "Right beside your Stanford graduation photo," Margaret replied. "He never moved it." The doors opened, revealing Reginald Blackwood gazing out at the city skyline, his silhouette commanding against the backdrop of skyscrapers bearing his name. At 62, he remained formidable, tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and an aura that silenced boardrooms. "Hello, Daddy," Sophia said, her voice steady but laced with nostalgia. Reginald turned, his dark eyes assessing her with the precision of a man who missed nothing. "My beautiful girl," he said, his tone heavy with love and regret. "You look tired." "I've been busy," she replied, accepting the bourbon he poured but not drinking. "Keeping busy with charity while your husband builds an empire on your foundation," he said, moving to the bar cart. "Why is the most brilliant woman I know pretending to be invisible?" Sophia walked to the window, staring at the city where Ethan was likely meeting contractors, oblivious to the truth. "You know why," she said. 5 years ago, I chose love over legacy. I believed marriage meant more than empire." Reginald's voice hardened, though gentle. "Do you still think that?" The question hung like a challenge. Sophia's reflection stared back. Not the self-effacing wife, but the fierce strategist who once ran circles around Wharton graduates. "He wasn't always like this," she said. "Ethan used to be humble, asking my opinion on everything. Now he calls my work hobbies and elevates women like Vanessa Klein." Reginald joined her, his smile sharp. Vanessa Klein, MBA, 4 languages, Kellerman Group's pawn. They plan to buy out Harrington Construction, dismantle it, and eliminate Ethan as a threat. Sophia's breath caught. "What kind of offer?" "Above market value," Reginald said matter-of-factly. "They'll absorb the profitable contracts and erase his legacy within 18 months. Ethan has no idea he's being played." Sophia set down her glass, hands trembling. "You have to warn him." "Do I?" Reginald's eyebrows rose. "The man who publicly called you unemployed?" "He's still my husband," she said. "And you're my daughter." Reginald pressed a button, and a wall panel slid open, revealing a digital display of companies, properties, and investments. "Thornfield Industries isn't just real estate," he said. "We own suppliers, banks, subcontractors, Ethan's entire ecosystem." Sophia stared, her mind racing. "How long have you watched him?" "Since you married him," he said softly. "Did you think I'd let my only child vanish without protecting her?" "Protecting how?" she asked. Reginald zoomed in on the display. "Harrington's biggest suppliers? Our subsidiaries. His subcontractors? My partners. His loans? Our banks hold 40% of their portfolio." The realization hit Sophia like a tidal wave. "You've been controlling his success." "Ensuring it," he corrected. "I refused to let my daughter's husband fail." Sophia sank into a leather chair, reeling. "Why tell me now?" "Because tomorrow, Ethan will meet me here and learn his angel investor has a name and expectations," Reginald said, pouring another bourbon. "The question is, do you want to be the shadow or the daughter who orchestrates his awakening?" Sophia's mind flashed to last night's gala, Ethan's arm around Vanessa, dismissing her work. She'd spent years hiding. Her Stanford degrees, global expansions, and fluency in languages to let Ethan shine. But Eleanor changed everything. Her daughter deserved a mother who owned her power. "What are you asking?" she said. "To come home," Reginald replied to the woman who designed our Southeast strategy, who outsmarted competitors before she was 25. He slid a folder across the desk. "Vanessa thinks she's playing a small-time contractor. She doesn't know she's facing Blackwood." Sophia opened it, finding a dossier on Vanessa and Kellerman's acquisition plan, every move mapped, every weakness exposed. "You knew their strategy," she said. "Before they formed it," Reginald confirmed. "What do you want to do?" Sophia's business mind kicked into gear, analyzing data, seeing 10 moves ahead. "If I step back," she said, "there's no hiding again. Ethan will know I've lied about who I am." "Yes," Reginald said, "and if he can't handle it, you'll see the man he's become." Silence stretched as Sophia weighed her choice. Outside, the city pulsed, unaware of the power shifting in this office. She stood, picking up the family photo on Reginald's desk, her graduation, both beaming with pride. "What time is Ethan's meeting?" she asked. 3, Reginald said, smiling. "I want to be here," Sophia said, "but my way. No intimidation, no takeover threats. If Ethan learns who I am, it'll be with dignity. And if he chooses Vanessa's easy money over you," Reginald asked. Sophia lifted the elephant sculpture, memories of childhood dreams flooding back. "Then he'll learn the most dangerous opponent isn't the one you see coming." Some daughters inherit their father's eyes, others his instinct for power. Tomorrow, Sophia Elena Harrington would wield both, and the empire would tremble. The grand ballroom of the Grandview Hotel shimmered under 1,000 chandeliers, golden silk drapes cascading along the walls, as servers in crisp white uniforms wove through the crowd with trays of champagne and caviar. The city's elite, business magnates, council members, and socialites gathered to celebrate Ethan Harrington's birthday, an event that screamed success to the world. Ethan stood at the heart of the room, his new Italian suit gleaming like armor, his confidence radiating as he recounted the triumphs of Harrington Heights to a captivated audience of investors and politicians. Sophia Elena Harrington lingered near the bar, her wineglass cool against her fingers, watching the man she once knew transform into a stranger who thrived on applause. She sipped her wine, marveling at how different Ethan looked from the humble dreamer who used to practice presentations in their cramped apartment, seeking her feedback with earnest eyes. His gestures were grand, his voice polished, his ego fed by the adoring crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan called out, tapping his champagne flute with a silver spoon. The room hushed, all eyes turning to the birthday man. Sophia's stomach tightened, a flicker of unease stirring. Ethan's speeches had grown unpredictable, mainly when fueled by liquor. He said, "Thank you for celebrating with me," his smile wide and practiced. "5 years ago, I was a nobody with a dream and empty pockets. Today, Harrington Construction is worth $800 million, with projects spanning 3 states and partnerships reaching the globe." Applause erupted, Ethan's chest swelling with pride. Sophia's gaze drifted to Vanessa Klein, standing near the front in a red dress that caught the light like a warning. Vanessa's eyes gleamed with calculated admiration as she watched Ethan. "Success doesn't happen alone," Ethan continued, his tone grandiose. "It takes vision, courage, and the right people." He gestured to Vanessa, who stepped forward with a demure smile. "Meet Vanessa Klein, our Director of Strategic Development. Her Wharton MBA, fluency in 4 languages, and global connections drive our international expansion." The crowd murmured approval as Vanessa waved. "Thank you, Ethan," she said. "Working with someone who shares my passion for global markets and bold strategies is thrilling." Sophia felt the familiar sting. Her work, literacy programs teaching thousands, housing for veteran families, and medical missions across continents, was reduced to nothing, while Vanessa soaked up praise. She kept her expression neutral, breathing through the hurt. Ethan's voice grew louder. "The secret to success? Smart choices. The right investments, partnerships, and team. Sometimes it means tough decisions about who belongs in your circle and who doesn't." Councilman Richard Sterling stepped forward, his voice booming. "Ethan, we're curious about your personal life. You've built an empire, but you keep it private. Tell us about the woman behind the man." Ethan's smile flickered, his eyes scanning until they found Sophia by the bar. "Oh, well, not much to say," he said, waving a hand. My wife Sophia keeps busy with various activities. The dismissive tone hit like a slap, but Sophia held her composure. The crowd glanced at her with polite disinterest. What activities? Asked Patricia Morrison, the mayor's wife. Her curiosity was tinged with condescension. Charity, mostly, Ethan replied, shrugging. Fundraisers, hospital volunteering, that sort of thing. Keeps her occupied while I build the business. Hobbies. The word hung heavy, a judgment on Sophia's life's work. 3,000 adults taught to read, 200 veteran homes built, countless lives saved abroad. Vanessa stepped closer to Ethan. It's terrific when spouses support careers, she said, her voice carrying. Ethan's dedication to something significant is inspiring. Not everyone grasps the sacrifices needed at this level. The implication was clear, and Sophia felt the room's eyes flicker toward her before returning to Ethan and Vanessa. Exactly, Ethan said. An empire demands focus, intelligence, and tough choices. Sentiment can't cloud judgment, nor relationships limit potential. Sophia set her wineglass down deliberately, her father's words echoing from their meeting. Do you want to be the shadow or the daughter who orchestrates his awakening? David Chin, the planning commissioner, called out. Ethan, what about international plans? Rumors of partnerships. Ethan's eyes lit up, moving closer to Vanessa, their proximity hinting at more than business. He said Vanessa's been key in spotting opportunities in South America, Eastern Europe, and Asia. It's about finding partners who understand global and local markets. Vanessa nodded, touching his arm. Ethan's open to bold strategies, unlike those stuck in small-scale thinking. The crowd chuckled, and Sophia's resolve hardened. She had been patient, supportive through struggles, silent in triumphs. She funded his dreams, suggested ideas he claimed, and watched him court allies who wouldn't have glanced at him without her family's backing. Her phone buzzed, a text from Reginald. Ready to come home, daughter? Sophia looked at Ethan, regaling the crowd with tales of self-made glory, Vanessa gazing at him with calculated warmth. She remembered the woman she was, Stanford valedictorian, mastermind of Blackwood's Southeast expansion, heir to a fortune that dwarfed Ethan's empire. She typed back, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, the hotel manager announced a special surprise for tonight's celebration from the entrance. Staff wheeled in an ice sculpture of Blackwood Tower, its golden logo gleaming, casting rainbow patterns across the walls. Ethan stared, confused. I didn't order this, he said. Gift, the manager replied, from Reginald Blackwood, with compliments for Mr. Harrington's success. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Reginald Blackwood, a titan, didn't acknowledge small-time contractors, let alone send gifts. Ethan's face shifted, surprise, confusion, then unease. Perhaps he's interested in a partnership, Vanessa suggested, but her voice wavered. Sophia smiled, watching the crowd buzz with speculation about Ethan's connection to the city's most powerful man. Tomorrow, the truth would unfold. Sophia approached the manager, speaking softly. Give my father my compliments on the sculpture. Tell him I'll see him tomorrow. As she left, Ethan's voice rose, deflecting questions about Reginald, a note of fear creeping in. Tomorrow, he'd learn that the most dangerous force is the one you overlook, and Sophia Elena Harrington was done being invisible. The morning sun glinted off the pearl-white Bentley Continental as it glided through downtown traffic, a sleek predator in a sea of ordinary cars. Sophia Elena Harrington gripped the leather steering wheel, her mind sharp and focused on the confrontation ahead. She had chosen her outfit precisely, a tailored black Armani suit, Louboutin heels adding 3 inches to her commanding presence, and her grandmother's diamond earrings sparkling like captured stars. The valet at Harrington Construction's headquarters fumbled his clipboard as the Bentley pulled up to the curb. The building, a modest 12-story glass and steel structure, symbolized everything Ethan believed he had built alone. Today, that illusion would shatter. Good morning, Sophia said to the valet, her voice pleasant but firm. I'm here to see Mr. Harrington. The young man, eyes wide at the car's opulence, stammered, Do you have an appointment, ma'am? I'm family, she replied, her smile cutting like steel. He'll make time. The lobby buzzed with the energy of a thriving business. Employees moved purposefully, their conversations a mix of architectural terms and financial projections. At the reception desk, Sarah, a young woman who had seen Sophia only at company events, looked up, her eyes cataloging Sophia's expensive attire. "May I help you?" she asked. "I'd like to see Ethan Harrington," Sophia said. "Tell him his wife is here." Sarah's eyebrows lifted slightly. She had glimpsed Sophia at parties, always in the background, unremarkable. This woman, exuding authority, was a stranger. "Of course, Mrs. Harrington," she said. "He's in a meeting with Ms. Klein, but I'm sure—" "Don't interrupt," Sophia cut in smoothly. "I'll wait. But please, call the executive floor. Tell them Sophia Elena Blackwood wishes to speak with whoever handles strategic partnerships." The name Blackwood hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. In the construction world, it was synonymous with untouchable power. Mrs. Harrington's last name was Harrington. "I'm sorry, did you say Blackwood?" she asked, trembling. "That's correct," Sophia said, handing over a business card. Sarah's fingers shook as she read, "Sophia Elena Blackwood, Chief Executive Officer, Blackwood Industries." The contact details matched the empire that dominated the state. "I'll call upstairs immediately," Sarah said, fumbling for the phone. "Thank you," Sophia replied. "And when Ethan's meeting ends, tell him I'm here to discuss business. He'll understand." She settled into a leather chair in the waiting area, observing the controlled chaos of Ethan's domain. She saw his corner office through a glass partition, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a river view. Inside, Ethan sat at his mahogany desk, Vanessa Klein pacing, pointing at documents strewn across a conference table. Their body language screamed tension. "Mrs. Harrington," Sarah's voice quavered. "The executive floor asks if you're here as Mrs. Harrington or Miss Blackwood." "Both," Sophia said calmly. Personal and professional interests often intersect in fascinating ways. 20 minutes later, Vanessa emerged, her face flushed, composure cracking. She clutched her briefcase like a shield, avoiding eye contact as her heels clicked sharply toward the elevators. Ethan appeared in his doorway, loosening his tie, his face etched with stress. He looked older, worn. Spotting Sophia, his expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "Sophia, what are you doing here? Why is Sarah staring like you're someone important?" Sophia rose with fluid grace. "Perhaps we should discuss this in your office." Ethan's eyes swept over her. Suit, jewelry, the aura of authority he'd never noticed. "You look different," he said. "Do I?" Sophia said, walking past him into the office, her heels confident on the hardwood. "I hope I'm not interrupting your strategic planning." Ethan closed the door, instinctively putting the desk between them. "Sophia, I may have said things that sounded dismissive, condescending, and humiliating last night." Sophia settled into a chair, crossing her legs with precision. "You said exactly what you meant, Ethan. The question is, do you understand what you revealed about yourself?" He faltered. "I don't know what's gotten into you today. How you're dressed and talking." He stopped, noticing Sarah's business card was left behind. His face paled as he read it. "Blackwood Industries," he whispered. "Where did you get this?" "From the same place as this suit, these shoes, this car," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "The same place I've drawn my identity for 30 years, even when I hid it from someone I loved." Ethan sank into his chair, the card trembling in his hands. "This is impossible. You're Sophia Harrington, my wife. You do charity, literacy programs for thousands, housing for veterans, and medical missions saving lives. I run programs that taught 3,000 adults to read, housed 200 veteran families, saved countless lives across 4 continents," Sophia said, steel in her voice. "Until yesterday, I let you call those hobbies, but Blackwood Industries, that's Reginald Blackwood's empire, the most powerful man in the country." "Yes," Sophia said. "He's also my father." The words landed like a sledgehammer. Ethan stared, struggling to reconcile the woman he knew with the truth before him. "Your father," he repeated, "Reginald Blackwood. Since the day I was born," Sophia said, "a wonderful man, protective to a fault, especially of his only daughter. Lately, he's been very interested in my marriage." Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, paling further. "It's Blackwood's office." "Take it," Sophia suggested. They have things to discuss about your business." With shaking hands, he answered, "This is Ethan Harrington." The voice said, "Mr. Harrington, this is Margaret Chen from Mr. Blackwood's office. He'd like to know if you've considered yesterday's conversation." Ethan's eyes locked on Sophia, who examined her manicured nails with feigned disinterest. "Yes, I've been thinking," he said. "Excellent," Margaret replied. "Mr. Blackwood requests a follow-up at 2 this afternoon. Convenient?" 2? Ethan echoed numbly. "Perfect. And Mr. Harrington, bring Mrs. Harrington. He's eager to see her again." The line went dead. Ethan stared at Sophia, who met his gaze with the calm of a predator. "How long have you lied about who you are?" he asked. "I let you see what you wanted," Sophia said. "A simple wife, grateful for your success, impressed by your achievements. That's what I became. And your father, how long has he been manipulating my business?" "Protected it," she corrected. "Every contract, loan, partnership, orchestrated to ensure you didn't fail." Sophia stood, smoothing her skirt. "The question now, Ethan, is what you'll do with the truth." She moved to the window, Blackwood Tower looming in the distance. "Every woman you've dismissed as just a wife might be the power behind the throne. The most dangerous person is the one you ignore, and I'm done being ignored." The conference room on the 62nd floor of Blackwood Tower commanded a view that stretched to the horizon, where the city's ambition met the sky in a haze of possibility. Reginald Blackwood sat at the head of an obsidian table, its polished surface reflecting the afternoon sunlight like a dark mirror. Ethan Harrington occupied the chair to his right, his posture rigid, hands clenched to mask his unease. But Sophia Elena Harrington held the room's attention, standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the skyline like a queen surveying her domain. Her navy power suit transformed her into a figure Ethan barely recognized, her presence radiating authority he had never seen. "Ethan," Reginald began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command, "yesterday gave you time to process our conversation." Ethan's knuckles whitened against the table. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm still grappling with the scope of what you've told me." "Call me Reginald," he said, a subtle edge in his tone. "We're family, after all." Ethan flinched at the words. "Sophia, would you help your husband understand our involvement in his success?" Reginald asked. Sophia turned from the window, her movements fluid and deliberate. She placed a leather portfolio on the table with precision. "Ethan, do you remember Thompson Steel?" she asked, her voice professional, unfamiliar. "The supplier who gave you preferential pricing on your first big project." "Of course," Ethan said. "They saved me 20% on materials. Without that deal, I couldn't have outbid competitors." Sophia opened the portfolio and slid a document across the table. "Thompson Steel has been a Blackwood Industries subsidiary for 8 years. This memo instructed them to offer you cost plus 5% pricing." Ethan stared at the paper, his face paling. "They said they believed in my vision. They believed in my instructions," Reginald interjected smoothly. "Continue, Sophia." "Morrison Banking Group," she said, producing another document. "The bank that approved your expansion loans when 3 others rejected you." "They called me low risk," Ethan said faintly, "because Blackwood Industries holds 42% of its commercial real estate portfolio," Sophia replied. "Here's the letter I wrote recommending your loan approval." Her finger traced the letterhead, landing on her elegant signature, familiar from years of grocery lists and birthday cards. "You wrote this," Ethan whispered, "and 12 others like it," Sophia said. "Every loan, line of credit, and financial backing that grew your business." She pulled out a stack of papers. "Want to see them all?" Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. "You're my wife. You don't have business connections or understand finance or construction." "Ethan," Reginald interrupted gently, "what do you know about your wife's education?" Ethan looked at Sophia, confusion deepening. Sophia said quietly that she went to college and got a degree from Stanford University, a bachelor's in economics, a master's in business administration, and a valedictorian. Silence filled the room, broken only by the faint hum of the building's air system. Ethan stared at Sophia as if she were a stranger wearing his wife's face. "You never told me," he said. "You never asked," she replied, her voice free of accusation, stating fact. Reginald pressed a button and a wall panel slid open, revealing a digital display of corporate connections, a constellation with Harrington Construction at its center. Your cleaning service, Reginald said, pointing. Blackwood subsidiary. Your insurance company? We own 30%. The architectural firm for your Riverside project? On our payroll for 15 years. Ethan's head spun. How is this possible? Because, son-in-law, when my daughter loves a struggling contractor, he becomes part of the Blackwood family, whether he knows it or not, Reginald said, his smile both kind and formidable. Did you think I'd let my only child face bankruptcy? Sophia touched the display, zooming in on Blackwood's southeast expansion, a 3-year network of acquisitions and partnerships. Ethan, what do you see here? She asked. At the bottom, a credit. Strategic plan by S.E. Blackwood. You designed this? Ethan asked, incredulous. Sophia said matter-of-factly about the entire southeast expansion. I identified markets, analyzed competitors, structured deals, and managed integration for 23 companies. It generated $2.4 billion in revenue. Ethan's jaw slackened. The woman he called a hobbyist had orchestrated deals dwarfing his company. Show him the international portfolio, Reginald said. Sophia tapped the screen, revealing Blackwood's operations in 17 countries, government partnerships, and $8.7 billion annual revenue. I lived in Singapore for 2 years, setting up Asian operations, she said. 6 months in Dubai for Middle Eastern partnerships. I speak 4 languages and have connections you read about in global news. When? Ethan's voice was a whisper. Before I met you, Sophia said, returning to her seat with controlled precision. Before I chose love over empire, I walked away to build something with a man who promised we'd create together. Reginald leaned forward, his expression grave. Ethan, every success you've achieved, every contract, dollar, door opened, was because Sophia sacrificed her birthright to ensure you didn't fail. And in return? Sophia asked softly. You called other women the brains behind your operation, reduced my work to hobbies, took credit for my ideas, and built alliances with people who wouldn't have answered your calls without my family. Ethan's chest tightened, his identity as a self-made man crumbling. I didn't know, he said. Because you never asked, Sophia said. You were so invested in your image that you never questioned why everything worked perfectly. Reginald stood, hands clasped behind his back. The business world is small, Ethan. Word travels fast when someone disrespects my daughter. Vanessa Klein's employers, the Kellerman Group, plan to acquire your company, strip it, and eliminate you as competition. Ethan's hands trembled. Is Vanessa working for them? She's setting you up for a hostile takeover, Reginald said. The offer will seem generous, but it's designed to destroy you. Sophia opened her portfolio and placed a single sheet before Ethan. She said this transfer agreement gives me a controlling interest in Harrington Construction through shell companies. Ethan stared, vision blurring. You want to take my company? I already own it, Sophia said. I always have. The question is whether you'll keep pretending you built it alone, or acknowledge that true partnerships require honesty. Silence gripped the room as Ethan grappled with the truth. His wife, dismissed for years, was the invisible force behind his empire. What happens now? He asked. Reginald and Sophia exchanged a glance, years of planning in their eyes. That depends on you, Reginald said. Continue dismissing my daughter. You'll learn what it's like to lose everything you think you've built. Or, Sophia added, her eyes piercing, remember the man I loved, who valued partnership over ego. The age of ignoring who I am ends today. The boardroom of Blackwood Tower hummed with the low murmur of anticipation, its walls lined with polished mahogany panels that absorbed sound like secrets. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden hue over the long oak table, where 3 figures sat in a tense triangle of power. Reginald Blackwood occupied the head, his silver hair impeccably combed, fingers steepled as he surveyed the room with the calm authority of a man who had built empires from whispers. To his right, Sophia Elena Harrington, formerly Blackwood, sat poised in a tailored navy suit that hugged her frame with effortless elegance. Her dark hair was pulled into a sleek chignon, and her eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, fixed on her husband with a mix of resolve and quiet sorrow. Still reeling from the revelations of the past days, Ethan Harrington slumped slightly in his chair at the foot of the table. His usual commanding presence had fractured. The bespoke suit hung looser on his shoulders, and shadows lingered under his eyes from sleepless nights poring over documents that upended his reality. Reginald cleared his throat, breaking the silence like a gavel. "Gentlemen, and Sophia, of course, we are here not for recriminations, but for clarity. Ethan, you have built something remarkable with Harrington Enterprises. But every fortress has its foundations. Today, we lay them bare." Ethan nodded curtly, his jaw tight. He had arrived at the tower that morning with a knot of dread in his stomach, summoned by a terse email from Sophia that simply read, "Truth awaits." Blackwood Tower loomed over the city like a monolith, a far cry from the modest offices where he had sketched his first blueprints. As he glanced at Sophia, he saw her not as the supportive wife he had taken for granted, but as a force he had never truly known. The drive over had been a blur of memories, her late nights balancing ledgers in their tiny apartment, the way she deferred to his ideas in meetings, always with that encouraging smile. How much had she hidden to let him shine? Sophia leaned forward, sliding a leather-bound folder across the table toward him. Her voice was steady, laced with the precision of someone who had negotiated billion-dollar deals. "Ethan, this is the ledger of our shared history. Not just yours, but ours. Let me walk you through it." She deliberately opened the folder, revealing charts and contracts that spanned years. First, the steel supply chain. Thompson Steel, the backbone of Harrington Heights, is not some opportunistic vendor you charmed into a deal. It is a wholly owned subsidiary of Blackwood Industries. Father acquired it in the 80s during a hostile takeover of a failing mill in Pittsburgh. We rerouted shipments to your sites at cost, shaving millions off your budgets without a single markup. Remember the delays on the foundation pours last year? That was not bad luck. It was a calculated hold until you agreed to our eco-friendly alloy specs, which you dismissed as overkill then. Ethan's fingers traced the columns of figures, his breath catching. Thompson Steel. The name had always rung a vague bell, but he had chalked it up to industry connections. Now, the truth stared back. Invoices stamped with Blackwood's crest, endorsements from Reginald himself. "I thought," he trailed off, meeting her gaze. "I negotiated that contract myself. The late nights, the golf outings with their execs." "You did," Sophia replied softly. "But the boardroom was stacked in your favor from the start. We ensured the terms favored Harrington. It was my suggestion, actually. I reviewed your proposal and saw the vulnerabilities. A slight adjustment here, a clause there, and suddenly your margins tripled." Reginald interjected with a nod, his tone gruff but approving. "My daughter has always had a head for this. She graduated top of her class at Stanford, summa cum laude in economics and international business. While breaking ground on your first project, Sophia spearheaded our Southeast Asia expansion. She turned a fledgling textile operation into a billion-dollar revenue stream, negotiating trade deals with governments that would make your board pale, all while playing the devoted wife and funding your dreams with her trust." Ethan's world tilted further. Stanford. He knew she had attended, but the details had faded into the background of their life together. She had mentioned it in passing during their courtship, a footnote to her stories of backpacking through Europe. But top of her class? Billion-dollar deals? The woman he had introduced at galas as his better half, whose charitable work he had belittled as a hobby, was a titan in her own right. He looked at her now, really looked, seeing the quiet intelligence that had always simmered beneath her deferential smiles. How had he missed it? How had he let his ego close his eyes to the genius at his side? "There is more," Sophia continued, flipping to the financials. "What venture capital infusions did you celebrate as angel investments?" "Those came from a blind trust I established through Blackwood's offshore entities. No strings, no oversight, because I wanted you to feel the victory as your own." "And the banking lines, the ones that kept you afloat during the recession?" "Allied National, your lifeline, is majority owned by our family. Reginald pulled levers to extend terms when others were calling in loans. We watched from the shadows, ensuring your rise." Ethan's hand trembled as he closed the folder, its weight heavier than any blueprint he had ever held. All this time, every milestone, every toast to my ingenuity, It was you. You built this with me, and I treated you like an accessory." Sophia's expression softened, a flicker of the vulnerability he remembered from their early days. "I hid it because I loved you, Ethan. When we met at that architecture symposium, you were passionate, unjaded, dreaming of skylines that touched the stars. You did not know I was Reginald Blackwood's daughter, the heiress to half the city's skyline. I wanted you to love the woman who laughed at your sketches, not the fortune behind her. So I stepped back, let you lead, and sacrificed my career to be your partner in the most critical ways. But love should not require erasure." Reginald shifted, his chair creaking under his solid frame. "Enough sentiment. There is a serpent in this garden, and her name is Vanessa Klein. She is no mere consultant, Ethan. Kellerman Group has her on payroll, feeding them intel on your operations. Those praise-filled lunches? They were reconnaissance. She reports every expansion plan and every vulnerability. If we do not act, Harrington Heights becomes their next acquisition target." Ethan's face hardened, the fog of shock giving way to fury. Vanessa. The woman with the Wharton MBA and the razor-sharp insights that had impressed him so. He recalled her lingering touches at the Riverside Gala, the way she echoed his ideas as if they were revelations. A pawn, or worse, a predator. "What does Kellerman stand to gain?" "Everything," Sophia said flatly. "They have circled for months, using Vanessa to sow doubt among your investors. Whispers of overextension, rumors of shaky foundations, all designed to drive down your valuation. But we have the countermeasures ready. Blackwood's legal team has already flagged irregularities in her contracts. One word from us, and her career unravels." Reginald leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "Or we let it play out. Teach the boy a lesson in hubris." "Father," Sophia chided gently, but there was steel in her voice. "Number. Ethan deserves the whole picture, not punishment." Ethan met her eyes, gratitude warring with shame. "What do you propose?" Sophia paused, then slid another document across the table, a transfer agreement, crisp and binding. "We should transfer Harrington Enterprises to Blackwood Holdings. On paper, it protects your assets from Kellerman's grasp. We fold it in, stabilize the supply chains, fortify the banks. You retain operational control, of course, but under our umbrella." Ethan scanned the lines, his pulse quickening. It was a lifeline, yes, but laced with implication. "This is not protection, is it? It is a lesson. You are giving me the empire back, but on your terms, to remind me that true power is shared, not seized." She nodded, a small smile ghosting her lips. "Exactly. I could have let you fall, watched from afar as I did for so long, but that is not love. This is a partnership, Ethan. Real, equal. Take it, or walk away knowing you built on borrowed ground." The room fell silent, and the city skyline beyond the windows was a testament to the empires they had woven. Reginald watched his daughter with pride, the girl who had once hidden her light now blazing. Ethan stared at the paper, the ink blurring slightly as emotion surged. He thought of their wedding vows, whispered in a sunlit chapel, promises of forever that had frayed under his ambition. Sophia, pregnant with their child, is silently carrying the weight of his legacy and hers. How could he refuse? "I accept," he said finally, his voice rough, "but on one condition, no more shadows. You step into the light with me, co-CEO, board chair, whatever it takes. Harrington Enterprises becomes Harrington Blackwood. We build the next phase together." Sophia's breath caught, surprise softening her features. Reginald chuckled, a rare sound that rumbled like distant thunder. "Bold move, son. I like it." As they shook hands over the agreement, sealing fates and futures, Ethan felt the first stirrings of rebirth. Vanessa's shadow loomed, a storm on the horizon, but for the first time, he faced it not alone. Sophia's hand lingered in his, warm and steady, a bridge from past deceptions to uncharted skies. Yet, as the meeting adjourned, a subtle undercurrent remained. Reginald pulled Ethan aside in the corridor, his grip firm on the younger man's shoulder. "She is giving you more than a company, boy. She is giving you her trust again. Do not squander it. Kellerman is ruthless, and Vanessa is sharper than she seems. Watch your flanks." Ethan nodded, the weight settling deeper. "I will. For her. for us. Down the hall, Sophia lingered by the window, hand resting on her abdomen, where their child kicked in quiet affirmation. The empire was unveiled, but the test lay ahead. Could a man forged in isolation learn to rule with a queen at his side? The city below pulsed with possibility, and in that moment, Sophia allowed herself to hope that he could. The fluorescent lights of Ethan's corner office buzzed like distant thunder, casting harsh shadows across the mahogany desk cluttered with half-finished contracts and cooling cups of coffee. It was mid-afternoon, the kind of hour when the city outside the floor-to-ceiling windows hummed with oblivious energy, but inside, the air felt thick with impending doom. Ethan leaned back in his leather chair, rubbing his temples, still reeling from the morning's revelations in the boardroom. Sophia's words echoed in his mind, her poised presentation laying bare the invisible scaffolding that had propped up his empire. Thompson Steel is a reliable supplier that has never once delayed a shipment. The favorable loans from First National Bank were secured without a single leverage point he could recall. And now, the truth. All of it woven from the threads of Blackwood Industries, pulled taut by the woman he had dismissed as a mere ornament. A sharp knock shattered the silence. Before he could respond, the door swung open, and Vanessa Klein strode in, her red-soled heels clicking against the polished floor like the ticking of a bomb. She carried a sleek leather briefcase, her posture radiating the confidence of someone who had just won a high-stakes poker hand. Her blonde hair was pulled into a flawless chignon, and her tailored pantsuit hugged her frame with the precision of a weapon. Ethan straightened, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. Vanessa had been his ally, his sounding board, the sharp mind that had whispered strategies into his ear over late-night drinks. Or so he had thought. "Ethan," she said, her voice smooth as silk but edged with something colder. "I bring news from Kellerman. Sit down. This is not a conversation for standing." He gestured to the chair opposite his desk, but she ignored it, placing the briefcase on the edge with a deliberate thud. Unzipping it, she extracted a thick folder stamped with the Kellerman Group logo, sliding it toward him. Ethan flipped it open, his eyes scanning the top page. A formal withdrawal letter. The proposed acquisition of Harrington Developments, valued at $150 million, was off the table, effective immediately. His stomach twisted as he read further. The language was polite, corporate boilerplate, but the subtext screamed betrayal. Kellerman had uncovered irregularities in the financials and dependencies on undisclosed affiliates that raised red flags. In plain terms, they knew. They knew about the Blackwood strings attached to every marionette limb of his operation. "What is this?" Ethan demanded, his voice rising despite his effort to keep it level. "We had a handshake deal. Terms were agreed upon last week." Vanessa crossed her arms, her green eyes locking onto his with a mix of pity and triumph. "Handshake deals are for equals, Ethan, but you are not an equal. Not anymore." Kellerman pulled the plug when their due diligence team traced the funding trails back to Reginald Blackwood. "You are his puppet, dancing on strings your wife has pulled since you said I do. They now see you as a liability, a facade built on borrowed glory. No one wants to buy into a house of cards." The words landed like blows, each one cracking the foundation of the life he had constructed. Ethan pushed the folder away, his mind racing through the implications. Kellerman's withdrawal was not just a lost sale, it was the domino that would topple the rest. Without that infusion of capital, the Harrington Heights project stalled at the permitting stage, leaving 20 towers half-dreamed in blueprints. He grabbed his phone, dialing his chief financial officer with frantic urgency. But the line connected only to voicemail, a curt message about an emergency board call. When he refreshed his email, the inbox overflowed with notifications that turned his blood to ice. The first came from Thompson Steel. Contract termination, effective at the end of business today, citing material breaches in payment guarantees. Next, First National Bank, revoking the line of credit that had fueled expansions for years. Their rationale was buried in clauses about collateral misrepresentation. Supplier after supplier followed, a cascade of cancellations from concrete pourers in Jersey to lighting fixtures from overseas. Even the city inspectors, once greased by Blackwood's quiet influence, now flagged violations on existing sites, halting crews mid-build. Ethan's empire, the gleaming testament to his vision, crumbled in real time. Pixels on a screen documenting the unraveling. He slumped forward, elbows on the desk, head in his hands. How had it come to this? Just yesterday, he had stood in this office, toasting with Vanessa about future conquests. She had leaned in close then, her perfume a subtle lure, her laughter a balm to his ego. Now, she watched him with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing an experiment gone awry. Part of her was thrilled at the precision of the strike. Kellerman had trained her well in the art of corporate sabotage. But beneath that professional veneer, a flicker of regret stirred. Sophia Harrington, née Blackwood, had always been the wild card in her calculations. Vanessa had dismissed her as the trophy wife, the pretty shadow trailing Ethan's spotlight, content with charity galas and nursery rhymes. How wrong she had been. Sophia was no fragile flower. She was the architect, the silent force that had funneled billions through back channels while playing the devoted spouse. Vanessa had first encountered Sophia at a fundraiser 2 years prior, a glittering affair where Ethan had paraded his wife like a prized possession. Sophia had smiled demurely, nodding along as Ethan regaled guests with tales of his triumphs, crediting no one but his own grit. Vanessa had pitied her then, and the woman was reduced to arm candy in a world of boardroom wolves. It made the plan easier: seduce the husband, sow doubts, position herself as the indispensable partner. But now, piecing together the fragments from Kellerman's intel, Vanessa saw the whole mosaic. Sophia's Stanford degree is at the top of her class in economics. Her quiet orchestration of Blackwood's southeast expansion, turning a regional player into a global contender. The jewelry pawned in those lean early days, not out of desperation, but to seed Ethan's first sight without alerting him to the source. It was masterful, a love disguised as sacrifice. Vanessa felt a pang. Not quite remorse, but the sharp twinge of underestimation. In business, she reminded herself, sentiment was a luxury. This was merely a lesson. Never bet against the queen behind the throne. Sophia had outmaneuvered them all, and Vanessa would learn from it, emerging sharper, ready for the next board. Ethan lifted his head, his face ashen, eyes hollowed by the weight of betrayal. "Why are you here, Vanessa? To gloat? To twist the knife?" She shook her head, retrieved a flash drive from her briefcase, and placed it beside the folder. "Not to gloat, to salvage what I can of my own career. Kellerman asked me to deliver the message personally and collect any outstanding documents. But listen, Ethan, there might be a way out. A consulting gig with us, perhaps. You have the name, the connections. Rebrand as an advisor, let the dust settle." He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed off the walls. "Advisor? After this? Do you want your scraps? Get out." Vanessa lingered for a moment, her expression softening imperceptibly. She had liked him once, in the naive way one likes a mark that flatters without complication. But admiration had curdled into disdain as his arrogance closed his eyes to the woman at his side. Be better, she wanted to say. Learn from her. Instead, she turned on her heel, leaving him to the ruins. The door had barely clicked shut when Ethan's assistant burst in, her face pale, clutching a manila envelope. "Mr. Harrington, this arrived by courier, priority, from a law firm in the city." He tore it open with trembling hands, the contents spilling across the desk like confetti from a funeral. Divorce papers drafted with the precision of a guillotine. Sophia Elena Harrington versus Ethan James Harrington. Grounds: irreconcilable differences. Assets are to be divided equitably, and custody of the unborn child is to be pending birth. A postscript in her elegant script: "I release you from the shadows I cast. Find your own light." The room spun. Ethan clutched the edge of the desk, the world narrowing to the stark black ink on cream paper. Their marriage, forged in stolen moments and whispered promises, was reduced to legalese. He thought of the early days, Sophia's laughter lighting up dingy apartments, her hands steady as she balanced books by lamplight. She had been his anchor, his secret weapon, and he had cast her adrift, belittling her world while basking in the glow she engineered. With the company hemorrhaging jobs and creditors circling like vultures, the loss cut deeper than any financial blow. Harrington Developments was not just bricks and mortar, it was the embodiment of his pride, the proof he had clawed his way up from nothing. And Sophia had been the invisible hand lifting him all along. He staggered to the window, pressing his forehead against the cool glass, gazing at the ant-like rush of pedestrians below. The skyline, once his conquest, now mocked him with its indifferent sprawl. Calls flooded in, panicked investors demanding explanations. Former colleagues offering condolences laced with schadenfreude. Ethan silenced his phone, sinking into the chair, the divorce papers crumpled in his fist. In the quiet that followed, a new clarity pierced the fog. He had built nothing alone. Every beam and deal bore the imprint of her genius. And in his blindness, he had shattered the one partnership that mattered. Ethan rose as dusk bled into the office, painting the walls in bruised purples. He gathered the scattered files, boxing them with mechanical precision, each movement a step toward an uncertain void. The empire he had lorded over was dissolved into liabilities and lawsuits. But beneath the wreckage, a seed of reckoning stirred. Sophia had not just supported him, she had loved him enough to let him fall, hoping the impact would wake him. Whether he could rise worthy of that love remained the question that haunted the emptying room. Vanessa, meanwhile, slipped into the elevator, her reflection in the mirrored walls a study in controlled chaos. The drive back to Kellerman's headquarters blurred past in a haze of honking taxis and neon signs. She replayed the scene, dissecting her performance. The delivery crisp, the exit timed perfectly. Yet, as she reviewed the intel one last time on her tablet, Sophia's profile glowed on the screen, a digital ghost with accolades stacking like battle honors. Vanessa closed the file, exhaling slowly. Underestimation was the gravest sin in their game. She would not repeat it. This collapse was Ethan's, but the lesson was hers. Power wore many masks, and the most dangerous were the ones you never saw coming. The regret had hardened into resolve by the time she reached her office. Tomorrow, she would pitch a new strategy that accounted for queens. The boardroom awaited, and Vanessa Klein would enter armed. Ethan sat alone as night fully claimed the city, the divorce papers await on his desk. He traced the curve of Sophia's signature, a flourish that once signed love letters, now severed ties. The unborn child, their shared miracle, twisted the knife further. He had failed them both, prioritizing illusions over truth. With the company in ashes and creditors at the gate, he faced ruin and rebirth. Or oblivion, the choice was his, for the first time unpropped. The first light of dawn filtered through the threadbare curtains of Ethan's rented studio apartment, painting the walls in soft grays. It was a far cry from the penthouse views he once commanded, this cramped space above a laundromat in the working-class district of Queens. The air smelled of fresh paint and stale coffee, a humble symphony that marked his new reality. 3 months had passed since the collapse, since the divorce papers had been signed in a sterile lawyer's office, sealing the end of Harrington Developments and the life it had built. Ethan Harrington, once the toast of Riverside Club galas, now woke to the insistent beep of a cheap alarm clock, his body aching from a day of honest labor. He swung his legs over the edge of the sagging mattress, feet meeting the cool linoleum floor. At 38, he felt older, the lines around his eyes deeper, etched not by years but by the relentless grind of regret. Mornings were the hardest. In the quiet before the world stirred, memories flooded in unbidden. Sophia's face was luminous in the glow of their wedding candlelight. The way her hand had rested on his arm during those early board meetings was a silent vote of confidence he had squandered. And now, the child she carried, a daughter whose existence he had only learned of in the fine print of their dissolution. Eleanor, a name he had whispered in dreams, is now a distant promise. Ethan dressed in faded jeans and a flannel shirt, the uniform of a man reclaiming his hands from the keyboard to the hammer. His new job waited at a construction site in Astoria, not as a visionary developer, but as a laborer, swinging a nail gun under the watchful eye of a foreman who barked orders without deference. It paid modestly, enough for rent and ramen, but it grounded him, each swing a reminder that empires rose on sweat, not illusions. He grabbed a thermos of black coffee and stepped into the crisp September air, the city awakening around him with the rumble of delivery trucks and the chatter of early commuters. The site was a skeleton of steel beams and plywood forms, a modest row of townhomes for middle-class families, worlds away from the glittering spires of Harrington Heights. Ethan arrived early, as always, nodding to his crewmates, men whose stories mirrored fragments of his own. Laid-off welders, immigrant masons chasing the American dream, one brick at a time. They called him E, stripping away the formality of his surname, and he welcomed it. No titles here, no power plays. Just the rhythm of work, the satisfaction of a plumb line straight and true. By noon, sweat soaked his shirt, his muscles burning from hauling rebar under the unrelenting sun. During the lunch break, he sat on an overturned bucket, unwrapping a peanut butter sandwich. The simple meal was a ritual of self-imposed austerity. His phone, now a basic model without the endless notifications of deals and deadlines, buzzed once. A text from his sister, checking in, but he let it sit unread. Connections had frayed in the fallout. Old friends vanished like smoke, their sympathies turning to awkward silences. Only the essentials remained, a few loyal souls and the pull of unfinished business. After the shift, Ethan drove his battered pickup truck to Mount Hebron Cemetery, the engine coughing in protest as he navigated the winding roads upstate. The grave of his mother, Eleanor James, lay under a canopy of oaks, her headstone weathered but tended, wildflowers blooming at its base in defiance of the season. He had come here sporadically in his ascent, quick visits squeezed between flights, leaving store-bought bouquets as tokens of guilt. Today he carried a trowel and a small pot of marigolds, kneeling in the soft earth to replant them with care. As he patted the soil firmly, a glint caught his eye. A bronze plaque, half hidden by ivy, engraved with words that stopped his breath. The Eleanor Harrington Scholarship Fund was established in memory of a woman whose quiet strength inspired generations. Dispersed annually to single mothers pursuing higher education, funded anonymously through the Blackwood Foundation. Ethan's hands trembled as he cleared the overgrowth, revealing the date. 2 years after her passing, long before the empire's peak. Sophia. It had to be her. He remembered the vague mentions of her charity work, dismissed as hobbies. But this was no whim. She had honored his mother secretly, weaving her memory into scholarships that lifted others from the margins his mother had known. Tears blurred his vision, hot and unbidden, as fragments of the past resurfaced. Eleanor's frail form in the hospice bed, her voice a whisper against the hum of machines. "Character is what you do when no one is watching," she had said, her fingers squeezing his with fading strength. He had nodded then, young and ambitious, promising the world while chasing shadows of approval. Now, alone amid the graves, the words landed with the weight of judgment. He had built his life on facades, crediting luck and grit while Sophia toiled unseen, pawning heirlooms to fund his prototypes, negotiating with suppliers under false names to shield his pride. Ethan lingered until dusk, the cemetery emptying of visitors, the air cooling to a chill that seeped into his bones. Driving back, the city lights blurred into streaks, a metaphor for the haze he had lived in. That night, in the dim bulb of his apartment, he pulled out a spiral notebook, its pages blank save for the date at the top. Journaling had started as a whim, a therapist's suggestion he had ignored until desperation clawed him awake at 3 a.m., replaying the boardroom confrontation. Now it was his confessional, ink-spilling regrets like blood from a fresh wound. "I was blind," he wrote, the pen scratching unevenly. "Arrogance dressed as confidence, a crown forged from her sacrifices. Every deal I boasted about, every toast to my vision, rested on the foundation she laid. Stanford's top graduate, Blackwood's rising star, was reduced to arm candy because I needed to feel like the hero. Vanessa's flattery fed the beast, but Sophia's silence starved it. And for what? a throne of sand washed away in an afternoon. The words flowed, raw and unfiltered, pages filling with admissions. He recounted the night he proposed, on a rooftop under stars, her eyes shining with a love untainted by his ambitions. He had promised partnership, then methodically sidelined her, calling her passions distractions while leaning on her intellect for every pivot. The journal captured the internal war, fury at his younger self, grief for the years lost, a tentative spark of resolve. Character, his mother's echo urged, rebuild not with gold, but with truth. Volunteering became his anchor, twice weekly at the Queen's General Hospital Pediatric Ward. The corridors buzzed with beeps and laughter, a stark contrast to the sterile boardrooms of his past. Ethan read stories to wide-eyed children, whose bald heads and IV lines were a humbling reminder of fragility. With her gap-toothed grin and obsession with dinosaurs, little Mia claimed him as her official paleontologist, demanding tales of T-Rex migrations. He glimpsed redemption's possibility in her unfiltered joy, the simple act of presence mending fractures he had inflicted. One evening, as he colored with a group in the playroom, a nurse handed him a file folder, her expression kind but curious. Donations log, she explained. Anonymous benefactor, earmarked for the oncology wing. The attached note, in Sophia's precise handwriting, for the fighters, like Eleanor. Expand the library, add more books on dreams that soar. Ethan's throat tightened, the crayon snapping in his grip. She had not stopped, even in separation. Her hand reached out, invisible threads binding their worlds. The knowledge of the pregnancy hit hardest in solitude. A revelation pieced from the divorce clause and a discreet call to her obstetrician, masked as concern from a family friend. Eleanor, their daughter, is due in winter, growing in her mother's quiet strength. He had no claim now, legally or otherwise, yet the bond pulled at him, a father's instinct clawing through the rubble. Dreams plagued him, holding a swaddled bundle, her tiny fingers curling around his, eyes the color of Sophia's, stormy and wise. Weeks blurred into routine, the journal thickening with reflections. He chronicled small victories, finishing a townhome frame ahead of schedule, earning a nod from the foreman. The first scholarship recipient he met was a young mother named Luhu, studying architecture at a community college. Her gratitude was a mirror of his mother's unfulfilled aspirations. In her story, he saw echoes of Sophia's grace, the quiet power of lifting others without fanfare. Doubt crept in during weak moments, whispers that he deserved this exile, that his flaws ran too deep for repair. But his mother's words anchored him, a compass in the fog. Character is what you do when no one is watching. So he persisted, volunteering extra shifts, tending the grave with fresh flowers, writing letters he never sent, apologies etched in careful script. To Sophia, I see you now, the architect of both of us. To Eleanor, your father is learning to build with heart, not haste. As autumn leaves turned the streets to gold, Ethan stood at his window, gazing at his once-owned skyline. It loomed distant, a testament to hubris conquered. The awakening was slow, a dawn breaking over ruins, but he glimpsed a man emerging, scarred but steady in its light. The path to Sophia and their child stretched uncertain, fraught with amends and time. Yet for the first time, he walked it unburdened by pretense, hands calloused from labor, heart open to the work ahead. The empire of one, rebuilt from the ground up, where true strength lay not in towers, but in the shadows one chose to illuminate. The fluorescent hum of the hospital corridor pressed against Ethan's ears like an unwelcome whisper as he burst through the emergency wing doors. It was a Tuesday evening in late October, the autumn chill clinging to his work boots, mud from the construction site flaking onto the linoleum. His phone had vibrated in his pocket during a break, a number he did not recognize flashing on the screen. The voice on the other end, clipped and professional, belonged to a nurse from Mount Sinai's maternity ward. Sophia Elena Harrington had been admitted that afternoon with severe preeclampsia, a complication that demanded immediate monitoring. The words had sliced through him, sharp and unrelenting. High blood pressure, protein in the urine, risks to both mother and baby escalating by the hour. Drive safely, the nurse had added, but Ethan had already dropped everything, keys in hand, heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped animal. He had not seen Sophia since the divorce was finalized 6 weeks prior. Their last exchange, a brief, strained handover of shared documents in a coffee shop neutral ground. She had looked radiant then, her hand resting protectively on the swell of her belly, eyes guarded but kind. Now, the thought of her vulnerable in a sterile bed propelled him forward, past the reception desk where he stammered her name, past the elevators that crawled upward too slowly. The ward smelled of antiseptic and faint lavender, a futile attempt at comfort amid the beeps of monitors and muffled cries from distant rooms. A young resident met him at the door to her private suite, her badge reading Dr. Lena Vasquez. Family, he had claimed, and she had nodded, ushering him in with a file folder tucked under her arm. Sophia lay propped against pillows, her skin pale against the crisp white sheets, an IV line snaking from her arm to a bag of magnesium sulfate dripping steadily. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the city lights, a fetal heart monitor tracing steady peaks on a screen beside her. She turned her head as he entered, surprise flickering across her features before softening into something unreadable. Ethan froze in the doorway, the weight of his uninvited presence crashing down. What right did he have here, after the wreckage he had left? Yet the pull was magnetic, drawing him to her bedside, his calloused hand hovering uncertainly before settling on the bedrail. "You came," she murmured, her voice thin but steady, laced with the quiet authority he had once mistaken for fragility. He nodded, throat tight, eyes tracing the monitors as if they held answers. Dr. Vasquez cleared her throat, stepping forward to explain. "Preeclampsia," she said, "occurs in about 5% of pregnancies, often without warning. Elevated blood pressure strains the organs, and in Sophia's case, it had spiked dangerously, threatening placental detachment and preterm labor. The baby, at 32 weeks, showed signs of distress, growth restricted by the reduced blood flow. Treatment meant bed rest, medications to lower the pressure and prevent seizures, and close surveillance. Delivery might come early, via cesarean if things worsen." "Questions?" the doctor asked, but Ethan could only manage a numb shake of his head. "Risks," he finally whispered, to her, to them. Dr. Vasquez met his gaze evenly. Manageable with prompt care, but serious. HELP syndrome could develop, liver and blood issues. We are watching every indicator. Sophia is strong and responsive to the meds already. Rest now helps." As the doctor slipped out, promising rounds in an hour, silence settled, heavy with unspoken histories. Ethan pulled a chair close, its plastic creak echoing his discomfort. He studied Sophia's face, the faint shadows under her eyes, the way her fingers absently traced the edge of the blanket. Guilt coiled in his gut, twisting tighter. This was no isolated storm, it was the harvest of years he had sown neglect. The empire's collapse had stripped him bare, forcing him to confront his ego in the quiet hours of labor and reflection. Volunteering at the hospital had immersed him in stories of resilience, children battling odds with fierce innocence, mothers enduring for the flicker of life within. Now, fate had thrust him into one such tale, his own unfinished chapter. "I learned about it last night," he admitted, voice low. "Could not sleep, read every article, every forum. You must have hidden the swelling and headaches. Why did you not call sooner?" Sophia shifted slightly, wincing as the movement tugged the IV. Pride, perhaps. Or habit. "I managed the boardrooms, the expansions. This felt like one more variable to control alone. But the pain sharpened today, vision blurring at the edges. Reginald insisted on the ambulance." Ethan's jaw clenched at her father's name, the man whose shadow had loomed over their unraveling. Reginald had extended an olive branch weeks ago, a discreet position offer at Blackwood Industries. Executive consultant, he called it, with a salary to rebuild comfortably, perks to ease the sting of downfall, a chance to prove value without starting from dust. Ethan had declined, the words tasting like surrender. "No," he had told the elder Blackwood over a terse phone call. "I need to earn it my way, not on your ledger, not as charity for the fool who broke your daughter." The refusal had been a vow to himself, a cornerstone in the reconstruction of character his mother's words demanded. Hands dirty from sights, nights poring over community college texts on sustainable building, he forged a path unpropped, each step a testament to change. Sophia watched him, her gaze piercing the defenses he had only begun to lower. "You refused him," she said softly. "I heard, stubborn as ever." He managed a faint smile, the first crack in the tension. "Stubborn got me here, building sandcastles. Time for something solid. I promise, Sophia, no more shadows. No more diminishing myself to lift myself. I see it now, every thread you wove." Tears welled in her eyes, not from weakness, but release, spilling over as she reached for his hand. Her fingers, cool and slender, intertwined with his rough ones, a bridge across the chasm. "I shrunk myself for you," she confessed, voice breaking on the words. "Folded ambitions into notes passed in secret, dreams deferred so yours could unfurl. Stanford's halls echoed with what might have been. International deals I sketched in margins while rocking empty cradles of our future. It was love, Ethan, the kind that bends without breaking, until it nearly does." Her admission hung between them, raw and illuminating, the monitor's steady rhythm underscoring the fragility of the moment. Ethan squeezed her hand, the warmth seeping into him like sunlight after a storm. He thought of the journal entries, pages filled with laments for the partner he had overlooked, the genius masked in deference. The volunteering shifts had taught him empathy's sharp edges, holding tiny hands through treatments, witnessing mother's quiet ferocity. Sophia embodied that now. Her body was a battlefield for their child, yet her spirit was unyielding. "We name her Eleanor," he ventured, the words tentative, a peace offering after my mother. "The woman who taught me strength is silent, enduring like you." Sophia's breath caught, a soft laugh escaping despite the fatigue. "Eleanor, yes, I chose it weeks ago, tracing her grave in my mind. Your mother's fire in those eyes you described, the scholarships she inspired. Our girl carries that legacy, complications or not." They sat then, hands linked, discussing the name's cadence and its roots in light and compassion. Visions flickered, Eleanor toddling through parks, her laughter echoing Eleanor's stories Ethan had shared in rare, vulnerable nights. School plays, first steps, holidays unmarred by old resentments. The conversation wove plans around the uncertainty, a deliberate act of hope. Dr. Vasquez returned with updates. Blood pressure stabilizing, baby's heart rate strong. Bed rest extended, but discharge is possible in days if trends hold. As night deepened, nurses dimming lights for rest, Ethan lingered, reluctant to leave the vigil. He fetched ice chips from the station, reading aloud from a dog-eared paperback on the side table, a light romance Sophia had packed. Her eyelids grew heavy, but she fought sleep, anchored to his voice. When she drifted off, he remained, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the monitor's green line, a lifeline. Outside, the city thrummed indifferent, taxis slicing through rain-slick streets. Ethan stepped into the hall for air, leaning against the wall, phone clutched like a talisman. A text from the foreman waited, shift coverage was arranged, and no questions were asked. The crew had become his quiet allies, nods of respect earned through sweat. Reginald's offer echoed faintly, a temptation quelled by resolve. Proving himself meant more than titles, it meant presence, partnership reborn. As Sophia stirred, dawn crept in, painting the room in pale hues. Ethan, still there, offered a styrofoam cup of tea, her favorite chamomile. "We face this together," he said, the promise sealing deeper than vows once exchanged. "No empires, just us, building from here." She nodded, color returning to her cheeks, the crisis ebbing like a tide. The health challenge had stripped illusions further, forging clarity from fear. Preeclampsia loomed as teacher, its lessons in vulnerability etching permanent change. Ethan refused the easy path, choosing the arduous climb to redemption. In the quiet ward, amid beeps and whispers, their story pivoted. Eleanor's heartbeat, the metronome of renewal. Strength, once borrowed, now rooted in truth, promising a family mended, not by gold, but by the unyielding light of recognition. The sterile hush of the operating room enveloped Sophia like a cool shroud as the anesthesiologist adjusted the spinal block, her lower body numbing under the drape. It was early November, the city outside cloaked in a premature winter fog that muffled the distant wail of sirens. At 34 weeks, Eleanor's arrival had been hastened by the preeclampsia's unyielding grip, the monitor's frantic alarms dictating a cesarean delivery to avert crisis. Sophia's blood pressure had stabilized under the magnesium drip, but the doctors had drawn the line. Any further delay risked catastrophe for the tiny life within. Reginald paced the waiting area, his silver hair disheveled, a titan reduced to mortal worry. Ethan stood sentinel beside him, hands clasped tight, the flannel of his work shirt a stark contrast to the polished linoleum. Hours of vigil had etched lines of exhaustion on his face, yet his eyes burned with a fierce determination forged in the fires of his awakening. Dr. Vasquez had explained the procedure with calm precision earlier that morning. A swift incision, extraction, stitching, all under local anesthesia to minimize risks. Sophia would remain awake, glimpsing her daughter first in the blur of gloved hands and bright lights. Ethan had squeezed her fingers then, his voice a steady anchor amid the swirl of nurses and equipment. "I am here," he had whispered, the words of vow etched deeper than any contract. She had nodded, drawing strength from his presence, the man who had once wandered in ego's fog, now her unwavering light. The scalpel's first touch was invisible to Sophia. It was more pressure than pain, and the team murmured with rhythmic efficiency. Suction hummed, monitors beeped in counterpoint, and a cry pierced the air, raw and triumphant, like the first crack of dawn through storm clouds. Eleanor, 7 pounds of miracle, slick and squirming, lifted into view by the neonatologist. Her lungs, immature but fierce, filled the room with wails that twisted Sophia's heart in exquisite joy. The doctor clamped and cut the cord with practiced grace, wrapping the infant in warmed blankets before placing her on Sophia's chest, skin to skin, the contact a primal bond sealing instantly. Tears streamed down Sophia's cheeks as she gazed at the scrunched face, tufts of dark hair matted against a forehead already furrowed in determination. Eleanor's eyes, slate blue and unfocused, fluttered open briefly, locking onto her mother's with an instinctual trust. APGAR scores flashed on the screen, 8 at 1 minute, 9 at 5, a testament to resilience against the odds. The NICU team hovered nearby, ready for transfer if needed, but the baby's color pinked steadily, oxygen sats climbing without aid. Sophia traced a finger along the velvet cheek, whispering promises into the downy crown. "Welcome, my love. We made it." Word reached Ethan in fragments, relayed by a scrub nurse through the swinging doors. Mother stable, baby breathing on her own, early but strong. He collapsed into a chair, head bowed, sobs racking his frame in silent release. The journey from collapse to this moment replayed in flashes. The journal's confessions, the calloused hands rebuilding more than structures. The hospital nights volunteering where he had learned to hold space for fragility. Eleanor was not just a daughter, she was redemption incarnate, a bridge from the man he had been to the father he vowed to become. When they wheeled Sophia to recovery, Ethan entered at last. The room was softer now, and the post-op monitors were subdued. She lay serene, Eleanor swaddled in a bassinet beside her, tiny chest rising in peaceful rhythm. He approached on tentative feet, as if the ground might shatter beneath him. "May I?" he asked, voice thick. Sophia nodded, her smile weary but radiant, extending a hand to guide him closer. He lifted the bundle with reverence, cradling her against his chest, the weight feather-light yet anchoring. Eleanor's lashes fanned against her cheeks, a button nose wrinkling in sleep. Ethan's breath caught, a flood of emotion cresting as her warmth seeped through his shirt. "Hello, little one," he murmured, pressing lips to her forehead. "I am your dad. I promise to show up daily in ways that matter. No crowns of sand, just steady ground for your dreams." Tears traced paths down his stubble-roughened jaw, dripping onto the blanket, but he held her firm, the act of baptism of sorts, washing away the stains of past blindness. Sophia watched, her heart swelling at the tenderness, the transformation etched in his features. The preeclampsia had been a crucible. forging clarity from chaos. But this sight surpassed it. Ethan, unarmored, vulnerable, wholly present. As nurses bustled with vitals and paperwork, she reached for the velvet box on the side table, an heirloom retrieved from storage by Reginald that morning. Inside nestled the ring, a simple gold band inset with a single emerald, passed from Ethan's grandmother to his mother, a symbol of enduring unions through hardship. She slipped it onto her finger, and the fit was perfect. The metal was cool against her skin. Ethan noticed, his eyes widening in recognition, that the relic was a ghost from family albums he had pored over in quieter days. "Gran's ring," he breathed, setting Eleanor gently back to nestle between them. It meant forever, through wars and wants. Sophia met his gaze, the emerald catching the light like a verdant promise. "A second chance," she said softly. "Slow, Ethan. We rebuild brick by brick, no rushing the foundation. Trust earned, not assumed." He nodded, relief and resolve mingling in his expression. "As you wish. I have time now, all of it, for us." The idyll was shattered 2 days later, as Sophia recovered in the postpartum suite, Eleanor rooming in with feedings every 3 hours. A knock echoed, sharp and insistent, pulling Ethan from a nap in the recliner. He opened the door to Vanessa Klein, impeccably suited in charcoal wool, her briefcase a shield, flanked by a stone-faced attorney whose pinstripes screamed litigation. The air thickened instantly, the hospital's sanctuary breached by corporate venom. "Ethan," Vanessa said, her tone clipped, all business, no trace of the flirtatious ally she once played. "We need to talk. Privately." Sophia stirred, sensing the shift, but Ethan raised a hand, stepping into the hall. The corridor bustled with visitors and carts, but he led them to a vacant lounge, the door clicking shut like a gavel. "What do you want?" he demanded, arms crossing over his chest. The laborers build a quiet intimidation. Vanessa's eyes flicked over him, appraising the changes. The faded jeans, the sun-kissed skin from sights, the absence of entitlement. "Kellerman is filing suit," she stated flatly, extracting a summons from her case. "Fraudulent misrepresentation in the acquisition talks. You concealed Blackwood affiliations and inflated your autonomy. Damages sought, 50 million, plus punitive. Discovery starts next week." The words landed like shrapnel, Ethan's mind reeling through the implications. The fledgling stability, the hospital bills piling beside newborn essentials, is now threatened by legal vultures. He had anticipated fallout, creditors' claims on the dissolved firm, but this struck personal, a blade aimed at the heart of his rebirth. Vanessa's return was no coincidence. Whispers from old contacts had hinted at her maneuvering, salvaging her reputation by scapegoating the fallen king. "Why now?" Ethan pressed, voice low to avoid drawing staff. "Eleanor just arrived. This is not the time." Vanessa's facade cracked briefly, a shadow of the regret she had nursed since the collapse. She replied that timing is never ideal in our world, but Kellerman demands blood. "You were the face. They want yours. Settle quietly, or it drags through courts, headlines screaming Harrington heirs deceit. Your family becomes tabloid fodder." Sophia appeared then, wheeled in a gown by a nurse, Eleanor in her arms, the picture of defiant serenity. The nurse excused herself, sensing tension, leaving the quartet in uneasy tableau. Vanessa's gaze softened fractionally at the sight, the infant's innocence a universal disarmament. But business reasserted, her posture stiffening. Sophia regarded her coolly, the ring glinting as she adjusted Eleanor's blanket. "Fraud?" she echoed, voice steel wrapped in silk. "Or consequences of underestimation? Kellerman's due diligence missed what I ensured stayed hidden for love, not deceit." The attorney shifted, but Vanessa silenced him with a glance. "This is between players," she said. "Ethan, take the deal. Walk away clean." He met Sophia's eyes, drawing fortitude from her unyielding calm. "No," he said firmly. "Fight it. I built something real now, beyond your games. Prove my efforts, not hide from them." As Vanessa and her escort departed, summons in hand, the lounge emptied of threat, leaving Ethan and Sophia to return to their room. The legal shadow loomed, consultations with attorneys queued for discharge day. But in Eleanor's coups and Sophia's quiet assurance, hope anchored them. The birth had heralded not just life, but a fortified alliance ready for tempests. Rings exchanged in spirit, vows renewed in adversity. They faced the horizon together, Eleanor's heartbeat the drum of their shared rhythm. Challenges awaited, but in the nursery's glow, possibility bloomed. A family forged anew, resilient as the dawn. The courtroom in downtown Manhattan gleamed under recessed lights, its oak paneling a somber backdrop to the unfolding drama. It was mid-December, and the holiday bustle outside was a distant hum against the tension within. Ethan sat at the plaintiff's table, his posture straight but unpretentious, dressed in a simple wool suit that spoke of resolve rather than ostentation. Beside him, Sophia held Eleanor's hand under the table, the 6-week-old bundled in a soft carrier, her tiny breaths a quiet counterpoint to the lawyer's barbs. Reginald Blackwood occupied the row behind them, his presence a silent bulwark, no longer the puppeteer but an ally in the fray. Across the aisle, Vanessa Klein conferred with her Kellerman counsel, her expression a mask of calculated poise. The summons she had delivered in the hospital, now the spearhead of a multi-million-dollar claim. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with wire-rimmed glasses, called the session to order. Fraudulent misrepresentation, the prosecution alleged. Ethan's dealings were laced with omissions that inflated his company's value. Discovery had unearthed emails, contracts, and the invisible web of Blackwood support that Kellerman painted as deceit. Vanessa took the stand first, her testimony crisp, detailing how Ethan's concealment had misled negotiations, costing her employers dearly. She spoke of boardroom whispers and late-night strategy sessions where Ethan had positioned himself as self-made while leaning on familial fortunes. Under cross-examination, Sophia's attorney, a sharp-minded woman named Carla Ruiz, pressed gently but relentlessly. Did Ms. Klein ever inquire about funding sources? No direct questions, Vanessa admitted, but due diligence should have sufficed. Carla arched a brow. Or perhaps ambition blinded oversight? Ethan's turn came after lunch, the room thickening with anticipation. He recounted the collapse not as victimhood, but as a catalyst. His voice steady as he described the months of labor on Astoria sites. The Callises earned swinging hammers, and the community college nights studying ethical development. Exhibits flashed on screens, payroll stubs from the crew, blueprints redrawn by his hand for affordable housing, grants secured through grassroots pitches to local foundations. No Blackwood strings here, he emphasized. These were efforts born of reckoning, proof that autonomy could bloom from ashes. Carla introduced depositions from former suppliers, men who spoke of Ethan's renewed grit, negotiating fair terms without leverage. The judge leaned forward, her pen pausing. Mr. Harrington, this suit claims you built on borrowed ground. How do you counter? With truth, Ethan replied. My wife supported me once, invisibly, out of love. I squandered that gift, but in losing it, I learned to stand alone. These projects are mine, vetted and cleaned by independent audits. Kellerman seeks to punish growth they failed to foresee. Sophia testified last, her poise magnetic, Eleanor gurgling softly as if in endorsement. She detailed the sacrifices without bitterness, the Stanford dreams shelved, the international postings traded for secret infusions that fueled Ethan's rise. But love was not leverage, she clarified. It was a partnership he had overlooked until the crisis was illuminated. Carla steered her to the gender currents beneath the case, the courtroom a microcosm of boardrooms where women's contributions often vanished into footnotes. How many wives, sisters, mothers and architects' empires only to be erased from ledgers? Sophia's words resonated, drawing nods from the gallery, a subtle indictment of inequalities that lingered in high-stakes deals. Vanessa shifted, her composure fracturing as parallels emerged, her assent at Kellerman, clawing visibility in a male-dominated arena, now weaponized against a couple rebuilding equity. Deliberation stretched into the evening, the jury retiring under fluorescent glow. Ethan and Sophia retreated to a nearby diner, the vinyl booths a humble haven. Eleanor nursing contentedly as they shared fries and coffee. Reginald joined them, his bourbon swapped for decaf, the 3 generations a tableau of mended bonds. "We fight as equals now," Sophia said, her fingers tracing Eleanor's cheek. "No more hiding my hand." Ethan nodded, his eyes on their daughter, symbolizing their shared horizon. The lawsuit was the final gauntlet, Vanessa's gambit an echo of old rivalries, but facing it together fortified them. Blackwood's network, once a shadow, now served transparently. Reginald's contacts yielded expert witnesses, financial forensics that dissected Kellerman's overreach. Equality meant access without ownership, which Ethan embraced, contributing his sight-honed insights to refine strategies. Verdict came at dawn, the courtroom sparsely populated, the judge's gavel a punctuation of vindication. Not guilty on all counts. Ethan's efforts proved personal. The fraud claim was dismissed as speculative overreach. Kellerman's team filed out stone-faced, Vanessa lingering at the doors, her gaze meeting Sophia's in a flicker of mutual regard. Perhaps respect, or the sting of lessons learned. Outside, snow dusted the steps, the city awakening to fresh starts. Spring unfurled with deliberate pace, the couple's recommitment a quiet ceremony in Central Park, cherry blossoms framing vows renewed. No grand affair, just close kin and the rustle of leaves. Eleanor in a lace gown, cradled by Reginald. Ethan slipped the emerald ring back onto Sophia's finger, its gleam undimmed by trials. "I see you fully," he pledged, as a partner in all. She echoed the sentiment, her hand in his, the future no longer a solo ascent, but a tandem climb. Their new venture, Harrington Blackwood Ventures, launched from a modest loft in Brooklyn, a fusion of legacies reimagined. Sustainable communities took center stage, mid-rise complexes with green roofs, affordable units woven into luxury fabrics, and designs honing labor's dignity. Sophia led strategy, her Stanford acumen sharpened by motherhood's clarity, pitching to investors with Eleanor's photo as a talisman. Ethan handled operations, and his crew expanded to include apprentices from the scholarships they funded. Diversity mandates ensured that voices long sidelined now shaped the skyline. Blackwood provided seed capital, but decisions flowed collaboratively. Board meetings were alive with debate, and no one was voice dominant. Eleanor became their emblem, not a prop, but inspiration. Her first steps echoing through the loft as blueprints unrolled. At 9 months, she babbled at site visits, tiny hard hat askew, a bridge between worlds. The press noted the shift, from scandal to symbol, a narrative of redemption laced with advocacy. Articles dissected the gender dynamics, Sophia's story spotlighting how women in business often subsidized success, only to be sidelined. Her return a clarion for parity. Panels followed, and her moderating discussions on equitable partnerships, Ethan at her side, amplified rather than overshadowed. Yet shadows lingered, subtle as dusk. Whispers in investor circles questioned the hybrid model. Old boys' clubs wary of shared thrones. A rival firm, Echoes of Kellerman, circled a key parcel. Tactics veiled but aggressive. Vanessa resurfaced in a consultancy role elsewhere, her path crossing at a conference, a nod exchanged over panels on ethical disruption. No malice now, just the quiet evolution of adversaries to acquaintances, each carrying scars as signposts. As summer waned, the family gathered at the upstate cottage, Eleanor's laughter chasing fireflies across the lawn. Ethan and Sophia sat on the porch, wine glasses touching, the horizon a canvas of possibilities. The new empire grew steadily, towers rising not as monuments but homes, each beam a testament to balanced power. Gender equality wove through its core, mentorships for women in trades, policies mandating co-leadership, metrics tracking not just profit but equity. But in the quiet hours, doubts surfaced like stars. Will love suffice against fresh phantoms? Sophia wondered aloud one night, Eleanor's soft snores drifting from the nursery. The world of deals bred envy, hierarchies resistant to dismantling. Ethan drew her close, his embrace a vow. "It must," he replied. "We build not just structures, but safeguards. Together, we illuminate the dark. The question hung open, and a thread will follow tomorrow. Their story is no fairy tale, but a living draft, revised with each dawn. Eleanor stirred in dreams, her future unwritten. Parents, vigilant architects of a legacy, where strength, shared, multiplied. Shadows banished, not by force, but light. In the dance of ambition and affection, they moved forward hand in hand. The empire, theirs, resilient and real.